Okay, welcome
Fantastic.
to our webinar, and off we go.
Wonderful. Nice to see everybody. We'll introduce ourselves. So the webinar for tonight is on the quality assurance of teaching and learning. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Chris Dyson. I'm the proud Deputy CEO of the Create Partnership, a role I've been in now for 1 year and 3 weeks. And it's been absolutely an amazing sort of adventure and journey that we're going on. And we're so pleased to team up with Evaluate Ed in delivering these webinars. The main focus of these webinars is that they're recorded and then they go on to the brilliant Evaluate Ed sort of website, so you can dip in, share with staff whenever you fancy and things. So
marvelous. And I'm Mark Unwin. I'm very privileged to be the CEO of Create Partnership Trust. I'm also the founder of AskKira.com, which is the UK's first and best AI education assistant. And the webinar that we're doing today builds on a series of webinars that Chris and I have done over the last term now. I think this might be number 5 in the series. They are sequential. So if there's anything that doesn't make any sense today, then it might make sense to go back and look at the previous webinars to get some more information and a bit more detail. And this is the first one in a new series about quality assurance. So hopefully this will be the basis of some more webinars going forward. The reason for the map is really to sort of try and give you an understanding of where this information comes from. So as Chris has said, we both are privileged to run a trust in Birmingham. Previously, I led schools in London and Manchester, and a trust in Liverpool and a trust in Stoke. And Chris has got, of course, the perspective from Parklands over in Leeds. Also, I'm a UVT at Manchester Met and a visiting contributor to the Institute of Education, and we also support a trust in a coastal region down in the Kent South East London border. So just to sort of give you an idea that hopefully this might work in your setting, that it's not just informed by one trust or one school. It's to give you a perspective across the country, and hopefully that might make it a bit more powerful for you. Chris, do you want to go through Ofsted and stuff?
Lovely. I mean, just to continue what Mark was saying there, I mean, the slides that we're using today can be used by the CEO, by the Deputy CEO, like myself, Director of Learning, head teachers, deputy head teachers, curriculum leaders. And all you do today, because all these slides go onto the Evaluate Ed sort of website, and then you can edit and adapt to sort your need. And the reason why we sort of put these together is because for governors or for trustees, whatever setting, if you're an academy or a local authority setting, we find that these were an ideal way of giving a summary of risk to the school or risk to a particular trust. And as Mark said, this is the first of a new set of 4 sort of webinars we've got. On February the 5th, we'll continue and look at behaviour and attendance. On March the 4th, we'll be looking at safeguarding and SEND, and it's great to see our lovely Lynn Howell, the Create Partnership, works so closely with on the call. And then on March the 19th, we're looking at finance, HR and estate. So we're looking at the entire sort of package. But as we said today, is sort of teaching and learning. Our experience, as well as being the head teacher at Parklands for 9 years, which was fortunate enough to get an outstanding Ofsted grade, but our aim in life is for every school to be good and outstanding. You know, it's the flick of a coin and things. But as well as doing that, I was also a national leader of education, working with schools in RI around the Yorkshire area. And again, the main drive for me doing that sort of role was pure and simply, we just want every school, no matter if they're in the north of England, the south of England, the west or the east, we just want every single school to give the best opportunities to their children, so that we're providing a good level of education which will stand the children in good stead for when they start high school at the end of our primary journey and things. And as you can see, Mark can give some of his examples, because he's had more Ofsteds than a lot of people and things. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, no, just to give you the sort of idea that this is sort of information over, most of it's very current, because I think Chris and I have been through or I've, certainly about 7 Ofsteds in the last, probably year and a half, something like that now. And much of what we're talking about is about the new framework, but much of what we're talking about today isn't about Ofsted. It's more about internal processes within schools and within trust. So what we're going to look at today, we'll look at why we quality assure teaching and learning. And I'll take you through that. We'll talk about how we quality assure teaching and learning. Chris can detail that. And then we'll talk about how we report on the quality assurance of teaching and learning. And we'll do that between the two of us from the perspective of how we report to governors and how we report to a trust board, depending on your role. So looking at why we quality assure teaching and learning. So 2 sort of quick slides. So why we quality assure? Well, I think, one of our values as a trust is, and in common with most trusts, I imagine, is a value of aspiration. So our trust values are innovation, collaboration, and integrity, always integrity. But it's also aspiration. And we know that our children and our families trust us to have aspirations for them, that children only get one chance at education, and we take that really, really seriously. So we quality assure teaching and learning, because that for us is the single biggest and most important factor in whether a child achieves and goes on to have a choice-filled life. And if children leave any stage of their education having broadly achieved, in line with at least in line with national standards, then we know that those children are better prepared to have choice in their later life. So that's a really important reason why we quality assure, because we want to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable for the quality of teaching and learning that children get. The second reason, and this we quality assure, and this is specifically at trust level, is as part of our risk management process. So part of my job and part of Chris's job is to provide the board with quality assurance. And that would be the same for a head teacher in a local authority school. Part of our job, isn't it, is to provide quality assurance for either a board of governors or a board of trustees. And their job is to ensure that they're managing risk in all areas. And if you talk to local governing boards, or you talk to governing bodies, or you talk to trust boards, they're well versed in their responsibilities of managing risk in finance. They're well versed in managing risk in terms of health and safety and HR. Sometimes they don't see teaching and learning in the same way. And yet I would say that risk management of teaching and learning is super, super important, because actually the damage from an Ofsted inspection that doesn't go the right way, or from lower academic achievement than the children deserve, is just as significant as the damage from mismanaged finances or poor training of HR or poor training of health and safety. And sometimes that's not seen in the same way, but we very much see it as part of the risk management process. And tied to that is the importance of really clear reporting to governors or reporting to trustees and directors, because only if governors or directors or trustees are receiving really clear, easy to understand reporting in all areas, are they able to make the strategic decisions which are their job. And I think being able to have a very clear, very subjective risk management system for teaching and learning, quality assurance system for teaching and learning, means that they get much clearer reporting and they can make better strategic decisions. And we can give you some examples of that. And the most important thing in terms of our quality assurance of teaching and learning is that as much as possible, we try to quality assure subjectively, so that everybody within the process understands the process, everybody in the process understands how to be successful within the process, and everybody in the process understands that they can be successful in the process with their own view of teaching and learning. They're not just trying to fit the mold of doing it the way that Chris did it at Parklands, or I did it or any of the schools that I led, that they understand that they can work in the way that they want to work, teach in the way that they want to teach. Their children can learn in the way they want them to learn, but they can be quality assured against a similar standard. And why we don't quality assure is just as important. So we're not quality assuring as part of an appraisal cycle, as part of a capability process. So we're not quality assuring to keep people out. This is not quality assurance as a deficit model. This is quality assurance as part of a risk management and reporting process. And it's quality assurance process that aims to show how successful schools are being, rather than a deficit model to catch schools out or to find where they're not doing things right. So that's the first thing why we don't quality assure. We also don't quality assure to sort of grade teaching and learning, either in its most explicit sense of grading, you know, in old school lesson grading, which I haven't now done. I was thinking about this the other day. I haven't graded a lesson now for 8 years, and couldn't do it anymore, to be fair. But we don't quality assure not just to grade teaching and learning in an explicit sense, but even in an implicit sense as well. And so many quality assurance processes within trusts and within schools still maintain the unspoken sort of gradings or just the whiff or the perception of grading within them. And that's absolutely at odds with what we're trying to do. We don't quality assure as some sort of Mockstead or some pretend Ofsted judgment. And Chris and I are really clear that we're not Ofsted inspectors. We don't speak for Ofsted. We don't do this to validate Ofsted in any way. This is not in any way, shape or form linked to any Ofsted cycle. This is about trusts and schools having their own standards for quality assurance, their own standards for teaching and learning, and holding ourselves to account against those standards. So we don't quality assure objectively in any way, shape or form. And actually our system has developed really quickly over the last 18 months and is continuing to be refined. And every refinement of that system is to remove objectivity at every term and to make it really clear to schools, to teachers, to leadership teams and head teachers how to be successful within our quality assurance process. So I'll hand you over to Chris and you can talk through the process. Just say next slide and I'll be the...
I've been dying to do that for so long now. So next slide, please. So as we said, all these questions will be on the Evaluate EdSo website, all in sort of Word and things, so you can tailor them to meet the needs of your school. It was more straightforward when I was just the head teacher of a two-formed entry school, because you're in and out of lessons all the time, and that is your pure and simply focus. So when it came to working with governors, I had everything that I knew what was happening in school in sort of my head and things. But now that we're sort of running 4 schools with nearly 3,000 children across the trust, it's important, obviously, because I'm not in these schools every single day, that working in partnership with the heads, we know where to go for the sort of next level and things. So you'll see that we've created 15 questions. And then on the right-hand side, we give some examples. So again, we're not just going into a school and just dropping this onto whoever we're actually speaking to, whether the heads or a subject leader or the curriculum lead. So again, so it's to allow the other schools to sort of do some prep work to know what we're roughly looking for with these questions and things. And then on the right-hand side, we've actually put a new column now. So we put a rating in there, and then we've got some keynotes that we'll jot in there. So when we come back to do a revisit, the following half term, we know that the new starting point where we're going to be starting from. So, and then quite simply, when we've looked at a question and we've looked at the examples and we've done some diving in to see the examples and things, if everything is in place, they score a 1. If things are partially in place, we give the score a 0.5. And if something is ongoing and not developed and such yet, they score a 0. And then what we do then is we add up all the scores, and we've got a spreadsheet just coming up in a moment, which makes it so much easier and things. But then you add up all the scores and you multiply that by 6.7. And why 6.7? Because each of the 15 questions is worth 6.7%. And then that gives us a percentage which then we can go back to the trust with, and anything that's 90% or above has got little or no risk for the trust. Something that's got 70% or higher has got an element of risk, but current actions tend to mitigate those. And then anything that's 50% up to 70% or below 50%, then that's a considerable risk to the trust. So it gives us as leaders and you guys as leaders actions that we need to implement ASAP to mitigate sort of that risk and things. Then if we go to the next slide now, what I've also done is I created some possible answers. So now that we've done our first visits, it's easier then to sit down with the person that we're actually speaking to and say, these are the key things we wanted answering. So it's sort of scaffolded down. So these are examples of possible answers, possible things that we want to see, just to make sure then that when we really drill down into the questions, we know that each school is sort of looking at the same elements and things. And as I said, all these things are available for you to edit and adapt to tailor need the needs of your school. So if we go, can we just go back to that previous slide, please, Mark? So when we're actually looking through the sort of questions, we knew that something like SEND is of paramount importance now across the school. So when we're looking at a curriculum, we're also looking, how does it engage those learners with some kind of educational need and things. And then we're looking at, and it's good experience for the leaders. It might even be the history leader or something. But can you describe how the curriculum is coherently planned and sequenced? Now, if you've got something like reading, or if you've got something like maths, that is pretty straightforward, because if you're using the White Rose math scheme or Power Maths or something, then you're naturally going to get progression and you're naturally going to get sequencing by using the scheme. Same with reading. Okay, so in reading, if you're on Oxford Reading Tree, whatever reading scheme you're on, the book bands naturally show the progression of how a child sort of develops their reading. But of course, that's not the same always in writing, where there's not a lot of schools that use formal sort of schemes, looking at the history, the geography, the DT, the art. So it's allowing those leaders to demonstrate how the area is sort of planned for and how we develop the knowledge and the skills year on year. And as I said, when we're coming down the questions, we're looking at how teachers ensure that students regularly review and reinforce the previous learning, because again, with the current government and the current direction, knowledge is key and knowledge is everything. So how are we ensuring that the children in year 3 who did the Stone Age are still referring to those sort of facts and that knowledge by the time they come up to be year 5 and year 6? We're looking at student outcomes. Further down, we're looking at sort of national data. And again, because one of the things that I think personally, but again, I don't know, one of the things I think personally that will come back into the sort of new framework will be looking at data at national sort of levels and things. So it's just to make sure people are aware of, oh, if we're behind national, what can we do to close that gap and push that gap? Because we don't like using deprivation as an excuse. We don't like using anything as an excuse, because at the end of the day, you've got to try and be as close to that national as possible and things. So next slide, please. And the next one after that. So again, those next three slides were all pure and simply giving possible answers and possible things you want to look to next time. So again, we're not going in criticizing, we're not going in with a stick. We're going in to develop leaders. We're going in to develop their practice, develop their understanding of the subject, and understanding how to articulate what it is that they're doing each and every day with someone who they're speaking to, whether it's myself, whether it's the curriculum leads, whether it's in-house or external, because we like to have external quality assurance as well to ensure what we're saying is following the right path and things. So next slide.
Okay, so we said that we would talk about how we report on quality assurance of teaching and learning, and this is applicable for governors or directors. And we talked about wanting to be as clear in our information to directors and trustees as possible. So as Chris has said, one of the things that we do when we quality assure in all the different areas, so achievement, attendance, behaviour, curriculum, finance, HR, health and safety, sign premises, then we generate this percentage score by allocating a risk of either 0, 0.5 or 1 in each of those areas, and we store that in an Excel spreadsheet. So this is an example with some dummy data from a couple of our schools whereby we've mocked up what it would look like at each of the times of year. And as you can imagine, that creates on the bottom tab there, it creates a dashboard where we can look at how the trust is doing and how the schools are doing in each of the areas. And we can create pie charts, we can create graphs, line graphs and bar graphs, which effectively report to governors and report to directors how well we're doing in each of those areas. Chris, have you got anything to add on this, on the Excel side of things?
Only that obviously when you go onto the Evaluate Ed sort of website, this will be a real live Excel document. We've just got a photo shot of it here, because if you go down onto, and this is why the directors love this, it hasn't got the detail, we'll come on to that in a moment, but as Mark's just explained, on the bottom of the screen there, this is a dummy data for achievement. You can click on the next tab for attendance, behaviour, so the curriculum, finance, safeguarding, SEN, HR, estate, health and safety. So again, the trustees have got on one simple document all the information from around all the schools in the trust. But then, as I said, we can then drill down into that, because you might just be looking at these numbers thinking, oh, it doesn't tell me a lot, this. It just gives you the sort of baseline sort of figure. And that's what we'll sort of look at next, how we develop this. So again, for trustees, and this was my fault when I first started, but on my first trustee meeting in March last year, I think my executive summaries were around about on average 9 pages of A4 on each document. Now you multiply that by 9 different areas, it means that trustees, directors, your governors, if you're in a local authority school, you know, these are really valuable people who do it free of charge and don't charge. And then suddenly, before you've got a board meeting, you've been sent 200 sheets of paper to look through. The trustees and ourselves decided that less is more. So in each of our sort of 9 areas, we give an executive summary, which will give you a rough outline of what we've done for teaching and learning this particular half term. So as you can see on this one, we've had Tony Staniff from White Rose Maths that's been in, giving us some great free training. He's following that up with a training day on February the 19th. We've got the lovely Rachel Quick, who was our external SEND sort of support sort of partner, who is coming to give a report on looking at special needs in a different school every term. So it's a simple snapshot on one side of A4, but then if you see underneath, all the detail come in the appendices. So there'll be an appendix for each of the 4 schools. Then there'll be the Tony Staniff sort of White Rose Maths review in one school, Tony Staniff White Rose Maths review in the other school, the Rachel Quick report, and any early excellence work we've done. So any external partners we've got in, we put that in the appendices. So again, the trustees, the governors, the directors can drill down into that as much or as little as they like. What we found is that obviously the trustees and directors are looking at risk. So if they see something that's all brilliant, all ones, all singing and dancing, they might not even look at that. They just want to look at the areas which, as the directors and the trustees, we can improve and work alongside the school. So as I said, so each area has just those ones. And then we've actually gone to, if you go to the previous slide, please, Mark. So now, again, the detail. So we've seen the spreadsheet with a random set of numbers on. We've seen an executive summary, giving an overview about what's been done. And then we can drill down into each school for the trustees, directors, governors, whoever wants to see. And then we can actually look directly at these. So again, it's the same questions that we've seen, the documents, and then on this right-hand side, it'll have the ratings. And that's the new column that I said, risk note. So If it's something that we need to pick up on another day, it's there for the trustees to clearly see, oh, we need to go back into that school and check that something on the website audit's been updated and changed. And then, as I said, at the bottom of this document here, you can see how we calculate the percentage, and then it clearly shows to whoever's reading the document, trustees, governors, directors, the risk which we highlight. So on this particular school, it may well be that it's highlighted at 70%, which again means there is some risk, but the school has got good plans, good robust systems in to mitigate those risks. And again, it means that ourselves as sort of leaders and the next level of support, if we've got schools that are between that 50 and 70%, we can use our time to close that gap and get them up to the 70% plus. And again, one thing that's on this document that isn't on the other ones, because this is the document with the detail on, so this document may well be 3 or 4 pages long, again, summarises what each school's done with regard to teaching and learning, whether it's developing the middle leader programme, the professional development programme. So we're covering all those key aspects of teaching and learning. And what comes after that slide, please, Mark? So, and again, the key things that we've looked at, if I've done some, or if Tony Staniff or whoever's, we're looking at maths in one particular area, what it is we've looked at, a clear question which the leaders have access to before, and then just some brief notes. So it clearly shows the impact of what we're doing to improve outcomes for students and things.
Perfect. And I think if you look at the amount of detail that directors can dip into, or governors can direct in, that's very similar to what you might find on a head teacher's report or an old-fashioned head teacher's report, which for some directors and governors is absolutely the level of detail that they want. But many, when you think about it across a number of different areas, like at the bottom there, achievement, attendance, behaviour, curriculum, health and safety, finance, HR, and site, then they and SEND, then the directors need to be able to see that across the entire piece. And I think having a system which is numerical as much as possible allows directors, especially those from outside an education background, people from a business background, to be able to get a really quick thumbnail appraisal of what areas to concentrate on. And we've been using this system now for about 18 months, something like that. The new system of putting a percentage on it is relatively new. Prior to that, we associated a risk score to it, which was slightly different. So a score of 1-1, for instance, of like no risk and no likelihood of risk. 2-2 would be like some risk, but it's being mitigated, and very little chance of anything risk, very little chance of any risk, and so on and so forth. And what that allowed us to do, reporting to directors, was this stage last year, was able to show the directors that achievement broadly wasn't a risk across the trust. It was broadly similar at each school. Behaviour was good across all the different schools and not a risk. Finance was strong in 3 out of the 4 schools. Safeguarding was strong in all 4 of the schools. HR was strong in 3 of the 4 schools. But in all 4 of the schools, there was some risk in terms of curriculum. So in all 4 schools, we were, after a process of external auditing, using documents similar to this, we were able to point out that there was risk in terms of curriculum sequencing, risk in terms of knowledge focus, risk in terms of vocabulary, risk in terms of subject leadership. And as a result of that, the directors were able to make an informed strategic decision to divert funds. So there was an investment by the trust of about £20,000 out of reserves at that stage into curriculum development for initially coaching and training the head teachers, then cascading down to the wider leadership teams, and then cascading down still further to the subject leaders, subject champions in each school. It also allowed for some release time for head teachers to release subject champions to further work on their curriculum sequencing. and it allowed some support time to provide training and to provide ongoing coaching for subject champions in Ofsted deep dive conversations. So that £20,000 wouldn't have been released from reserves without really strong evidence base that curriculum was an area to concentrate on, as opposed to concentrating on attendance, or as opposed to concentrating on achievement, or concentrating on site and premises, for instance. So having a really clear risk management system for directors allowed them to make that decision rapidly. And as a result of that decision, which was taken towards the end of November, by the end of January, all 4 schools had completed the curriculum development work that was part of the programme. And then when Brookfields, one of our schools, was inspected in late February, March, that curriculum work was then embedded and visible to the Ofsted inspectors, and played no small part in contributing to them moving from inadequate to good. And then similarly, when Hodge Hill were inspected in sort of late June, they were still further down the road in terms of developing their curriculum following that investment, and they were able to move from requires improvement to good. So hopefully that shows that these quality assurance systems, whether it be for curriculum or teaching and learning or attendance behaviour or whatever, aren't there in some punitive way. They're there to help directors understand where to allocate resources and help governors to understand where to provide some challenge and where to allocate resources. And if a trust or a school has a really clear quality assurance system and a really clear risk management system and really clear reporting to directors, then directors and governors can make those strategic decisions for really rapid improvement within their schools. And that has a really positive impact on the lives of children. And I'm currently in one of our primary schools. I know Chris has been in all week, last week. I'm currently in one of our primary schools, and we've just spent some time looking at the curriculum across the school. And I've just spent some time talking to a panel of 20 children in year 4, 5 and 6. And they've been able to tell me at length how much they enjoy all the different aspects of the curriculum, how they enjoy their humanities teaching, the trips and residence trips that they go on, and the visitors that they have, how much music's improved, how they really enjoy doing art, which was something that they didn't concentrate on so much, how their new Mandarin teaching in MFL is miles better than the Spanish that they did previously. Interesting. So that investment of you know, roughly about £20,000, which is not an insignificant amount of money, but not in the context of our £14 million budget, is not a huge amount of money, but properly directed support based on accurate quality assurance and clear reporting has made a significant difference to the lives of the children here. Whereas if that £20,000 had been allocated in a different area that wasn't the right area to invest in, it wouldn't have made such a significant difference. So there's a clear line for me between these quality assurance documents and the lives of the children in our schools.
If you could just go back, there's just been a question, Mark. If you just go back to the one with the numbers on. Someone's just said, just explain again what the ones and zeros. So again, and it was a great question, because if you were a trustee or governor now, just looking at that, I think, what on earth do those numbers mean? And that's why when you drill down further and you go specifically into the school, if a school's got a 0, the other reports will tell you why that scored a 0. And just remember, just to reiterate, this is all dummy data that we put on here.
Should I open it up in the Excel spreadsheet? Would it help to actually see it in the Excel spreadsheet, Chris? So you
might as well do that. So, but in answer to the sort of question, if something is really embedded, really effective, and there's nothing really more to be done in that sort of area, it scores a 1. 1 meaning 100% perfect. If a lot of things are in place, but it's not quite at that finished end mark to get the maximum outcomes for the children, then it will score a 0.5. And then when we're discussing with the heads, with the leaders, when we're talking to, we can give suggestions, we can give balloons, how to move from the 0.5 to a 1. And then if there is sort of nothing in place yet, or if it is significant, if the data is significantly behind national, will signify a 0, which means there is some risk there that we really need some actions in place to sort of look at and things. So it's quite simply a three-tiered, 1 1, everything's brilliant. 0.5, you're on your way there, and 0, how can we help you and support you in moving from 0 to 0.5 and 1? And as I've just said, then I've just used the word balloon, because one thing that we pride ourselves at the Create Partnership is that Mark, when he started his role 2 years in the summer, he didn't want to form a total replica of what he'd done up in his Cheshire schools. And likewise, the first thing I ever said to my head teachers is, look, I am not creating 4 new Parkland schools. I'm here to help, support, and develop your school in your community. You are the head teacher. You're the one who knows all about your community, all about the needs of your children, more than I do. But what myself and Mark and our other deputy CEO, Kieran, does is we give balloons to staff. And these balloons that the head teachers get, they might think, no, it won't work here, and they can pop it, but then they might actually run with that balloon. They might want to mold the balloon and turn it round a bit until suddenly they've got a magical poodle turned out of it and things. So it's all these things are there to sort of assist and help and develop the heads, develop the staff, and everything such as that. So Mark, we're live on the spreadsheet now, aren't we?
We were. I've just pressed the wrong button. Sorry.
Live TV.
Well, I mean, well, we're just trying to find the spreadsheet. It has magically reappeared. But I just think this is just a fantastic example of how trusts are making the evaluated product work for you. And I mean, I am looking at this spreadsheet now and I'm thinking that is an absolutely brilliant resource. And the fact that it's helped, lead to those decisions where you've managed to get more funding to plug those areas in teaching and learning and curriculum that you need. That's absolutely incredible. So I'll hand back over to you.
Lovely. And I think it's important, just before Mark talks about the spreadsheet, this is not, and this process on teaching and learning is not just sat in an office talking with one person. How do we know best about teaching and learning? Going along with the leaders, whether it's the head, the curriculum lead, the history lead, whoever it is, actually going in alongside those leaders into the classroom to see examples of directed teaching, to see example of the assessment for learning techniques children use, whether they're using mini whiteboards or whatever. So it's looking inside the classroom. It's, as Mark's just said, he spent the afternoon with 20 year 4, 5 and 6, because who best to explain about teaching and learning than the children themselves? So the children could speak wonderfully about the music, about the arts. So it's not all about reading, writing, maths, but it's about not just sitting down in an office, in your own 4 walls with no children around. It's about getting into the classroom, speaking with the children, getting the children to showcase what it was they loved about the Romans and how it linked with something that they were doing in literacy and English and others, and the reading and other such things. So again, and it's not an exercise that's done for now. We'll spend half a day with the leaders looking through this, just so the leaders feel empowered. And we feel that we can give any support that they sort of need and things. So,
yeah, and I think that's a message. Oh, go on, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, I just realised that because this is all the dummy data on the bottom, the percentages were missing on that. So that's why I just paused it and resumed it. So as you can see there, what the directors get is the percentage at the bottom there. So this is dummy data, but it's broadly similar to what they would be looking at over time. So they can look at the trends in terms of the improvement in percentage data, and they can also look at they can analyze that against other schools, against between schools, and against like the agreed sort of thresholds of where risk are. So they see it as a percentage at the bottom there, which is something that I've just added onto that, which was obviously the dummy data had overwritten that. And
again, only the trustees see this total end of summary, because again, we are developing 4 schools in the trust. We're not having a league table saying, oh, your school did perform better than that school this time and things. So the only people who get to see this entire sort of end spreadsheet are the trustees themselves. Individual schools get to see their percentages and they can compare autumn 1 to autumn 2, etc. But we don't want to create with an environment where everyone is against each other, because collaboration, we want to rise to the top together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's such an important message, and certainly one that you know, we share with you. All about developing leaders, investing the time with people, having conversations, discussing teaching and learning, talking to the children. And I mean, we've got, in terms of reviews and things that we've got in terms of self-evaluation, we've got things like the subject leadership review, and helpful questions, which is great for quality assuring your curriculum and the quality of teaching and learning and pupil voice. We've also got other reviews like SEND and what the provision is for the SEND students. And I think it's just so great to get together and be able to talk about teaching and learning. So I'd just like to open it up now, really, and just invite, if anybody's got any questions. Lynn, it's been lovely to see you. Thank you for joining. But if anyone has got any questions, if you would like, you can either unmute and ask, or you can type in the chat. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have Chris and Mark with us. I always look forward to your webinars. So I'll just see if there's any other questions.
I mean, just going back to evaluate, Ed, I mean, that's, again, if you're speaking to the SEND person in school, you know, by those using your tool, that's their evidence there. You know, so it's one click of the button. Here's our evidence, and our school, our lead, not only our head teachers, but our leaders throughout the trust have really benefited by having a portal like Evaluate Ed, where all the resources can come off, all their data will be stayed in one place. So when we come down and talk, it's one click of a button from giving us the results that we want to see, that's already been evidenced. So we are just basically quality assuring what they're informing us and things.
Yeah, and that's where I think the reviews lend themselves to that conversation, because if someone's gone in and they've done a review, and then you're coming in to have the discussion, well, you've put that as your evidence. Let's see what you're doing. Let's celebrate your successes. Let's give you a bit of guidance in here, and opportunity to support you. So there's lots of opportunities there. We've got lots of thank yous to you both on the chat. Thank you very much for your time and input, and thank you very much for coming as well. And I think, is there anything else you two would like to add?
Well, as soon as I come off this call, I will send Phil the spreadsheet, which is quite important. I'll just take the school names off on the top, so someone who's not been on this call think, why are they putting school data up and things? And then it's there for you to use sort of yourself. And then I will send through the sort of questions and the answers that sort of we use. But again, as always, it's a balloon for you guys. You use it however way you see fit, adapt it to meet the needs of your school, and whatever's on your brilliant Evaluate Ed SEF that you might have completed and things. So
yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for this evening. I know that we've recorded the webinar, so we will be able to send you a copy out, and you will be able to get it on our website within the next week or so. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely evening.
Don't forget, February the 5th is behaviour and attendance, March the 4th is safeguarding and SEND, and March the 19th is finance, HR and estates.
Wonderful.